Hey, it's Thursday. It's time for some day drinking and some chatting with authors. Um, I've changed how I'm doing this on Facebook. So it's going straight to a day drinking with authors Facebook page, a Facebook group. So if you are seeing this online or if you're listening on the podcast and you're like, that sounds interesting. What's going on in that Facebook group? Well, I can tell you right now, I'm giving away a bunch of books. So by all means, come and find Day Drinking with Authors, comment, and you could hopefully win a book. This is the end of thriller month for me. It has been 4 weeks of murder and kidnapping and now amnesia. I will say I'm not sleeping great, but this is a great way to end my little run of suspense novels. Mary McKinnon is my first repeat guest. I had her on at the very beginning. Hi, B. Hi, Allie. I had her on at the very beginning of this little adventure of ours, and she's back. So she's been doing, anyway, we've got a lot to talk about. But first, let me read her back cover copy for You Will Remember Me. An unput-downable amnesia thriller that begs the question, how can you trust anyone when you can't even trust yourself? Forget the truth, remember the lies. He wakes up on a deserted beach in Maryland with a gash on his head and wearing only his swim trunks. He can't remember who he is. Everything, his identity, his life, his loved ones, has been replaced by a dizzying fog of uncertainty. But returning to his main hometown in search of the truth uncovers more questions than answers. Lily Reed thinks she knows her boyfriend, Jack, until he goes missing one night, and her frantic search reveals that he's been lying to her since they met, desperate to escape a dark past he'd purposely left behind. Maya Scott has been trying to find her estranged stepbrother, Asher, since he disappeared without a trace. Having him back, missing memory and all, feels like a miracle. But with a mutual history full of devastating secrets, how far will Maya go to ensure she alone takes them to the grave? She'll take them pretty far, not gonna lie to you. Here, let's bring in Hannah.
Hi.
Hannah, I have to ask that line, forget the lie, what is it?
Forget the truth, remember the lies. Isn't it?
Yes. Is that like, was that like the germ of the book for you?
Is that what, sorry?
Was that the germ of the book for you? Like, was that the little oyster?
No, I didn't write that. That was my editor came up with that. Yeah. No, she did a great job. And the title, the back cover copy, and the title, the tagline, to forget is to regret. That was all Emily. That was not me. And she did a great job. So yeah, I will not take credit for that. I can't.
Did you have a working title that got changed?
I did. Yeah.
What was it?
I called it A Stranger Within. And I thought that was kind of cool. And I am notoriously really crap with titles. I'm just rubbish. They always change every time. And I said to Emily, I said, I've got a title. It's going to be A Stranger Within. And she said, no, it isn't, because Lisa Unger had a book come out that was The Stranger Inside. So nope.
This was a better title. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry, Hannah.
Oh no. Like I said, I'm rubbish at titles. The next one, the one for next year, I had a title and I gave her the title. And I was quite proud of it, and she said nope. So the next one, I'm just going to call it Book 7. That'll show her. Ha.
Book 7. Yep, that's got a ring to it.
It does.
Well, you are my first repeat guest, which means that you have now released 2 books in COVID.
Yes.
What, in terms of like writing and releasing novels, what have you learned this year? And I'm sorry, like I should have warned you that I was going to ask you this question.
Oh, no,
it's kind of a big one. But what's something you feel like you cannot wait to take into life after COVID when it comes to writing and releasing novels? Like, do you have anything, or are you going to burn it all to the ground?
No. Do you know what I realized is how important online events are? Because I before we were all confined to our homes pretty much, or those who were fortunate enough to work from home, I had done some online stuff. I'd done some Facebook Lives. I'd done some Zoom stuff and some book clubs and things. but I hadn't used StreamYard. First Chapter Fund didn't exist, so there were lots of things that I was dabbling with, but not really hadn't mastered and hadn't realised the importance. And I think as much as we return, when we return back to normal, I am definitely going to continue with the online events, because geographical boundaries and physical boundaries just fall away. There are still technological boundaries for some, of course, and that shouldn't be discounted, but there are so many options for online events, and you can just simply getting people together from different parts of the country or the world, indeed, that can come together and chat about books, whether it's authors or viewers alike. So, and I think with the pandemic, so many of us were forced to flip online, and lots of people went online, and there's an abundance of online events that people now feel much more comfortable with them. So it's almost as if we've all been given this massive technological shove forward at the same time, which when you kind of discount the reason why, let's ignore the horrible reason why, is actually quite beneficial.
Yeah, I think it forced, I mean, speaking for myself, who's been doing this for a long time and has like always dug my heels in when it comes to like some of this stuff, like, you've got to know, I am an old dog. I don't want to learn new tricks. You've got to be kidding me. I never would have done any of this. And I do think it has, that I can watch a release party, of my favorite authors that I would never have been able to get to otherwise. So yeah, that part of it is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you, we will talk about the book, but First Chapter Fun.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who might not be familiar, and I urge you all to go check it out. Again, it's another Facebook group called First Chapter Fun. Tell us about it.
Well, it started March 17th, 2020, so over a year ago, on a whim, honestly, when 14 authors were in a messenger chat, collectively freaking out about our books coming out and the world shutting down, and how is this going to work and what we're going to do. And I piped up, and I looked this up. It was 7:15 on March 16th, and I said, why don't I read the first chapter of your books online? And I went live the very next day at 11:30. I hadn't realized it was the very next day with a graphic and everything. I know, it's crazy.
Talk about new tricks.
Seriously. And I read for 50 odd days in a row, and then teamed up with Hank Philippi Ryan. It used to be just on my Facebook page and Instagram, always the two at the same time. And then we teamed up and created the Facebook group, the Instagram handle, First Chapter Fun. We have a website now. We have swag.
You do. You have t-shirts.
We have t-shirts and mugs and tote bags and pajamas that say "Not Right Now," which is one of the catchphrases, which I thought was hilarious. And we read a new of the first chapter of a different book, not ours for the most part. Occasionally, twice a year, when they come out, I'll read from Hank's and she reads from mine. And it's always at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. And we introduce the author and the book, and then we read the first chapter live, warts and all, if we make a mistake.
And it's interesting that that's a thing that's really taken off. Like the idea of, audiobooks are obviously huge, right, but that introduction to new authors, like, you can read a back cover copy and you can read a great review and a friend can say, oh my gosh, I love this book. But the best thing is someone reading the first chapter and you're going, right, yeah, click.
yeah, exactly. And it's fun, and it really has become a community. There are avid watchers every week, and we save all of the videos. So I think today's Thursday. Today was episode 165, I think.
No breaks, like no weeks off?
No, we haven't had a single one off yet. No, not yet. Not a day where it hasn't worked. We've had days where the connection has dropped, and then we've taken the video from one of the places, one of the platforms, and uploaded it to the other one. That has happened. But no, we haven't had a week off. So we saved them all. So anyone who wants to go and watch 165 episodes, they're about half an hour each, there's about 80 hours of viewing pleasure. They can do so in our IGTV or on the videos tab on Facebook. They're all there.
Yeah, it's a really great way to read, because and it's not just thrillers or like contemporary fiction. Like today's was it like it was a paranormal sort of
it was Laurie King's Castle. I was going to say Castle Black, but that would be Game of Thrones. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It was historical, a Sherlock Holmes mystery.
Fun. So let's talk about your amazing book. So one of the things that I really that I ask everybody now that I just love to know, what was the opening idea of this book? Like, what was the first, like, ooh, I think there's something there, and then how much did it change through the whole process of writing and then editing? Like, is it still even in the book?
Yeah. So the weird thing is, I kept seeing this image of a guy on a beach, and that's how the book opens. It's a man on a beach. He doesn't know where he's from, why he's there, or who he is. And that just seemed to stick in my mind. And I couldn't actually trace back why until it hit me. And it was a story. Do you remember a couple of years ago, it was 2018, a Torontonian man went missing in Lake Placid on a ski hill. Do you remember that? Yeah. He just disappeared, and he reappeared in Sacramento in his ski gear 6 days later, and didn't know who he was. And I realized that this image of the guy on the beach had actually been inspired by that story, because I thought, so he had a credit card. He had his wife's phone number. He remembered it, and he was able to call her and then be safely returned home. But my immediate question was, of course, what could have gone wrong?
Right.
What if the person, because when you have amnesia, you don't know who you are, or depending on the type that my guy has in the book.
You're like an amnesia expert right now.
Yeah, I did quite a fair amount of research on it. But if you don't know who you are, that means you have to trust people to tell you who you are, and you either have to believe them or you don't. Who they are, who you are, and what if they don't have your best interests at heart? So that was where that came from, and it's definitely still in the book. I mean, it's not the gentleman's story, obviously, but that was the news story that inspired that scene on the beach that just wouldn't let me go.
It's funny, having had this month of thrillers, it's really interesting, and I can see it's every writer gets to that place where they've got a killer premise. This guy wakes up on a beach, can't remember who he is, and they take that premise, and you can see where the author's like, all right, I got to shake this off, and this story's got to become about something else. Right? It can't just be this guy on a beach and, where, that sort of thing. And I was wondering, is that always hard to know? Like, you have this great idea and you're like, no, the story is actually about this. Like, the hook was your way in. Like, is that part hard? Like, figuring out where to put it, and like, any idea?
I like to have, so I'm plotting my next one, not the next one, the one after. And I had an idea, but I wasn't sure, okay, does it have legs? Where am I going to go with that? Mm-hmm. And yesterday I went out on a plotting walk. So I go out for a walk and I don't listen to anything. I just walk and think. Because I don't have my phone. Well, I have my phone with me, but it's in my pocket, and it's just me and my head. And I thought, oh, that could happen. And then the ending could be this. Oh, that would be a great ending. So it seems to me that I need to have the beginning and the end. And then it's a whole load of nothing in between, but at least I know where I'm going. That seems to be how it works. And then I'll break that middle soupy bit of, I don't know, down into bigger, large plot points, and then break those down further still. So that seems to be how my brain works. I need to know where my character or characters are at the beginning, where they are at the end, or in my mind, in my first draft, where they'll end up. And then I can fill in that massive, 18,000 word gap.
Yeah. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
So,
I'll figure it out.
you have like in this book and in Sister Dear, which was your book before this one, it's chugging along, and I'm like, I think I know what's going to happen, and there's an ending, and then there's like another ending. So you have the twist, and then you have the twist has a twist. When you need to know what your characters are going to be at the end, is it the twist or is it the twist of the twist?
Generally, it's the twist of the twist. Certainly for these last two, and for the one for next year, actually. The one for next year is an anomaly. I don't think I'll ever have such a smooth writing experience again. As hard as You Will Remember Me was, the one for next year, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, because I thought, it can't be this smooth. There's something wrong. There's something wrong, and it worked. I don't know why, but I had the beginning, I had the end, and I even had the last word.
Whoa!
As long as my editor lets me keep it, which I hope she will. I hope she will.
Word is spatula.
Yeah, especially. So that was really odd, and that is the twist on the twist as well. So generally, I have the ending, and they don't, certainly for Sister Dear and You Will Remember Me and the one for next year, they haven't really changed.
Sorry, you were saying that You Will Remember Me was really hard. Like, it was writing it hard, was editing it hard?
Both. So I there are different ways of handling amnesia. I decided to have a point of view character with amnesia, so that's strike one, because he could have been the secondary character, but no, I decided he's gonna. And then I could have had a non-linear timeline, like the great Ruth Ware did in A Dark Wood. She has a character with amnesia, but then you have flashback chapters, so you get to know who she is. I decided, no, I'm not going to do what the great Ruth Ware did. No, I'll do something. I'll have a linear timeline. It'll be fine. And then we have S.J. Watson, who wrote Before I Go to Sleep, made into a movie with Nicole Kidman, where there are diary entries and she reads the diary the next morning. No, I decided not to do that either. So all of these things these great authors did, I just completely ignored. So, which was not very smart. So it was really, really hard, because even though I'd plotted everything, the man from the beach has a backstory, but he's not allowed to know it. He couldn't have a memory or something that triggered something. When we write, they see something and then they remember something. It helps us flesh that character out for the reader, and I couldn't have any of that. So it was hard. It was hard, and there was there's an element of opioids in there as well. And I asked fellow author A.F. Alex Brady to help me out, because she's a psychotherapist, and she has done she counsels people with drug addiction, and she's well versed in how that all works. And she read it, and she said, she's from New York, and she said, so how direct can I be? I said, oh, go full New York on me. I mean, I don't want lip service. Just tell me everything that's wrong with it. And she said, you've never met a drug dealer, have you? And I said, no, why? And she said, well, they're not polite. They don't show up on time. They don't give you what you've asked for. It's just, you gotta rough him up a bit. So
it's not like going to Home Sense.
I'll have one of those and one of it was. So that was.
He's got his coat open. You're like, yes, thank you. Yes.
So that was, it was. I felt actually, I think the most difficult part. Well, there were two things. One was the amnesia bit, but then also that opioid element was a lot more convoluted in the first draft that I sent to my editor, and I didn't feel like, even though I talked with Alex about it, I still didn't feel like I knew what I was doing, and that troubled me. And I think that's why it just felt clunky. And there was a point where I wanted to set the whole thing on fire. I mean, it was just burn it all to the ground 6 weeks before I needed to hand it in. You know, I was just freaking out, thinking I can't do this. So it did need, in comparison to the one for next year, it did need a lot of editing. And of course, Emily, my brilliant editor, was instrumental in that. I couldn't have done it without her.
It is hard when you set, like I mean, it is a challenge. But when you set that conflict and that character that has the possibility or the threat of being static, right? Like of never changing. So the idea that he wakes up is like, do I remember anything? No. Shit. How about now? No.
Yeah, exactly. How do you build a character? How do you layer them? How do you develop them? How do you convey who they are without having multiple scenes of the other character going, okay, I'm going to make us a cup of tea and then we're going to sit down and have a nice chat. You know, it just, it'd be boring. So yeah, it was a hard book.
We have a question here from Allie. You have spoken about having 3 different endings for You Will Remember Me. Will you ever reveal the other 2, or will you save them for future books?
Oh, I won't, because it would be a spoiler potentially a spoiler if I did. But yeah, that would be quite interesting, because I did have 3 in mind when I sent the outline to my editor, and I said, you know, I've got this one, I've got this one, I've got this one, the darkest one. How dark do you think I can go? And she said, as dark as you want, because we can always pull back. And we didn't. In fact, out of the last third of the book that I really took back to the studs and rewrote a lot of it, the last chapter hardly changed at all.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was quite happy with that. At least I didn't have to rewrite something. You get your editing and you get to the last chapter, you think, oh, thank God, I don't have to do that one.
Well, you know, it's one of those things that you're like, I just got edits back. You know, you open up that file and you're like, oh,
yeah.
And you know when you've done something right. You know, the red lines are a little bit less, the comments are a little bit less, and then you realize that all the comments are addressing everything so that one section really sings. You know, you're like, okay, we're gonna do everything we can to make this work so this shines.
They do a phenomenal job, editors. They really do. Emily's always, when I saw the structural letter, I thought, why couldn't I see that? Why didn't I see that? No. Why didn't I realize that?
Well, don't you hand up in a book at this point and you're sort of like, I know that probably X is wrong, Y is totally wrong, and I really hope Z isn't wrong. Like, that's how I hand books in now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, so I think it's okay. You will remember me when I sent it to her. I said I know there are issues with it. With the one for next year, I was hoping they would be minimal, because it just felt a lot smoother, and the structurals were very small. It was that's never going to happen again. I'm just going to enjoy it.
You know, I've written a couple of books, and when you have a really, really hard one, you are then blessed with, it's like having a baby that doesn't sleep and then you get a baby. We've got another comment here, and this is from Facebook user. I'm sorry, I don't have, however I've set this up, Facebook user, your name is not registering. But I love when authors will send you in an email their other endings or what happened next, a final chapter, not in the purchased book.
Oh, clever.
That's an idea. That's a little something for your newsletter list.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that this is the third book of yours that I've read, and I really do feel that if it weren't for all of the murder, you'd be a women's fiction writer and maybe even a romance author, because your characters always start in a place of, like, in a relationship that's real, like that there is usually a real love between those characters, even though they're keeping terrible secrets.
Right.
And the story, particularly this one, is about them trying to get back to each other.
Yes.
And those feelings that they had. And Lily, who's the girlfriend whose boyfriend's gone missing, she carries a huge emotional load in this book. Like, she is grieving and then she's freaking out and she distances herself and then rushes right back in. Like, it's a lot of emotional. Was she hard to write, or was she easy because you're like, this guy doesn't remember anything, so we
I liked writing Lily. She was fun to write because, I mean, being in that situation where your partner goes missing, you don't know where they are. Everything is pointing towards the fact that he's dead, but you refuse to believe that. That was quite emotional to write. I had a friend who went missing and who was deceased, and we didn't know for about a week. So that was interesting to write, to say the least. So I really enjoyed writing her because she was. I have a character in the book, or in my books, that are solid and that ground the rest. So in Sister Dear, it was Lewis, the hot neighbor upstairs. So he was just a good guy. He really had good intentions. He wasn't nasty or anything like that. He was just a good, genuine gentleman. He was a really good guy. And I felt Lily, yeah, she had some secrets, but her intentions were good.
Right.
So she balanced some of the other characters out nicely in that sense.
And it is another like sort of hallmark of your books, and I'd like to steal it if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't think I can, but not just because it would be wrong for me to steal your things.
I don't mind sharing.
The impact of starting, it's not even like you start in the action. It's like you start one step after the action. So something traumatic has happened, and your characters are both dealing with this traumatic thing that just happened and sort of processing it. And so that there's no room for backstory. You're just fully engaged in these characters and what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? So then when you do give us backstory, we're like, oh man, I had no idea. Like it's an excellent trick that you, not, is it a trick? I don't know what it is. It's a really great way to get your reader in. You know, I'm 4 chapters in before I can put the book down to make dinner or whatever, right?
Oh, fantastic.
Like, is that your intention? Is that something that you cultivate? Like, when you start a book, are you like, cut that, start right here? Like, how do you start a book?
Well, often the first chapters, actually, no, in Sister Dear, I had a bit of is that a slow beginning? Chapter 2, where the protagonist goes to a hospice where her dad is dying of cancer, and she overhears a conversation between her dad and her mum that she is not actually his biological daughter. So that was originally the first chapter, but I found it was too long. Not that it's particularly long, but I just thought it was a bit, just walking down the street and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, nah, I can do better than that. So I actually took one of the last chapters and moved it to the beginning.
Right.
So it then starts, a woman's in a situation, she's in trouble, we know someone's died, we don't know who or how or why. And then chapter 2 is 15 months earlier. So that was quite deliberate. Because I didn't feel that the beginning, this was even before I'd sent it to Emily, I just wanted something with a bigger hook.
Right.
And with You Will Remember Me, as much as a lot of the story changed, the first chapter, again, like the last one, changed very little. So I like having a big hook at the beginning, right, in the first chapter, where you don't know, something has happened and something's going on, and someone's in a situation, like the man on the beach, he's in a situation, he doesn't have a memory, but you don't know what has happened to him, rather than starting off with what happened to him and then the next chapter is him waking up at the beach, because that would kind of spoil the story. So it is quite deliberate, to have this big hook so that people are going, ooh, I need to know what happens in chapter 2.
Hugely effective, very effective. I mean, it really does work. And oh, sorry, I got distracted by my notes for a second. I wanted to make sure that I asked you that question, and then I did get it. So there we go. So when you're starting your book, sorry, that was, when you're starting your book and you have your your opening premise, and you have your twist, and then the twist on the twist. Are you discovering all of that backstory as you write, or does it happen while you edit, or are you thinking, writing, like how is it all of that backstory that feeds both of those two big events?
So it depends. So I developed the character's backstory before I even write chapter one. I'll not all of it. I mean, that's impossible. And it would take the fun out of writing out of it as well if I
Right.
knew everything or developed everything. But I'll interview the characters, the main ones, fill out a questionnaire, make sure they're very different from one another.
You have a questionnaire that you do?
I do. I'll send it to you. Yeah.
What's on the questionnaire?
Well, I mean, the normal stuff like how old are they? What do they look like? Where did they grow up? Where did they go to school? Who their parents are? What their parents did? Do they get along with their parents? Have they ever seen a ghost? Do they believe in ghosts? Have they seen a dead body? How much money do they have in a bank account? What would they do if they won $100,000, etc., etc.? What's their favorite joke? It's quite in depth. And I love the last two questions is, why am I interested in the character? Why should the reader be?
Damn.
And where are they at the beginning and where are they at the end? So yeah, I'll send it to you. It's really
Is this something you've created? Or
no, it's something I found on the internet and then added more questions. So it's kind of a collage, I guess, of something I found plus other things I saw plus stuff I made up myself. And it really helps because that way I'm not thinking, well, they're all 5'8" with brown curly hair, blue eye. Not that I really put the descriptions in like that so much anymore, but they didn't all grow up in the same town. Their parents didn't all have the same profession. So it forces me to really think about the characters and make them different from one another. So I'll do that for the main ones and I did that for all three, and You Will Remember Me. And in the one for next year, it's one person's point of view.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How much of a challenge was that?
It was great. I loved it.
It was easy.
Yeah, he's got a good. He was very chatty, so it's a man's point of view, and it's the antagonist as well. So it's all from the antagonist's point of view. So I did what would normally be the protag profile as well. So it just, and it's great for procrastinating as well when I don't want to write.
Yeah, really. Well, it's funny. Like, I tend to like jump in. Like, I get 4 ideas cobbled together, and I'm like, "Ooh, I gotta go." And I, some of those details. When I go back through my book, I'm like, "Oh, like I've changed the father's name 20 times." Like, if I had written it down, it would save me.
I've done that too, though. Where I've changed a character's name in the middle and thought, I'll go back and change it later and just do a search and get rid of all of the wrong names. I've done that too, but there's just no way. Don't you find that there's no way to, even if you plot as much as you want, there's just no way you can, all of the history, all of the everything that happened. There's just no way.
And you don't. I find that I don't really want to. Like, part of the magic is when you go, oh my God, yes. They knew each other in high school.
Yes. That's really... there's a scene in You Will Remember Me with Maya where she meets her stepbrother at a diner, and she's wearing a T-shirt that says square root of 144 because she's 12. And I don't know where that came from. I just thought, oh, that's the T-shirt she's wearing. And I love that when that happens because she's got Mary Janes on her feet, and she's, she's a bit nerdy and very uncomfortable. And then she meets this boy and stuff. And that scene wasn't planned. I knew that they would meet, but I hadn't figured out the how and the exact how she would react and stuff. And that's lovely when you then write that, because you're discovering your characters even more. It feels a bit like you're an archaeologist and you're digging out the finer details,
Yeah, the details about that kind of, like, that shirt, and it has an impact, right? Like, she's wearing the shirt, he notices the shirt, she's got a relationship to the shirt, he can tell, like, it was very well done. Very well done. Another thing that I was going to ask you about before I let you go, another thing that I really loved in this book, or it really struck me in this book, was how your dialogue does so much your dialogue does so much work. Like it is both character revealing and obviously plot forwarding. And also, I think because of the amnesia, right? Like, it also is revealing quite a bit. These are characters who talk quite a bit. Was that a challenge or was that a relief in some capacity?
I love writing dialogue. It's one of my favorite things. And one of my favorite authors, David Nichols, writes dialogue to perfection. So he wrote One Day, which was made into a movie with Anne Hathaway. And he recently, they had it on CBC. He wrote a book called Us. Not the scary movie Us.
Right.
No. It was a series about I think it was a 6-part series about Douglas, who basically is married. His wife tells him, I want a divorce. And they'd organized a European trip, him, his wife, and their son, Albie. And they go on this trip anyway, even though the whole relationship is falling apart, and the father-son relationship is just terrible because Douglas is a real nerd and his son is very artsy, and they just can't connect over anything. And Douglas, whatever he says is always the wrong thing. Also, his teenage son thinks anyway. And David Nichols is just, even before I started writing, he's been one of my favorite authors. And I remember reading his first novel called Starter for 10, I think over here it's called that. And I was reading the dialogue thinking, how does he do that? It's just, it's fast, it's funny, it's wry, and there are hardly any dialogue tags, and yet you always know who's talking. How does he do that? So I have all of his books, and I when I was writing The Neighbors, I remember thinking, how would I do that? And then grabbing his book and going, oh, and then punctuation and stuff. So I absolutely love writing dialogue. I love having people interrupt each other or talking at cross purposes. Funnily enough, when I had my first book, when I wrote Time After Time, and I was doing a writing course, an online writing course, one of the instructor said, you write really good dialogue. Oh, thank you very much. And he said, yeah, but I thought, oh no, just stop there. Just
right.
Just
no,
but that.
No.
And he said, but it's too clear. And I said, what do you mean it's too clear? And he said, that's not the way people talk. People don't always say, same with a drug dealer, right? They don't always say what they mean. They don't always understand what the other person is saying. We cut one another off. We finish each other's sentences. We jump in thinking we know what they're going to say, and actually we got it wrong. And then arguments, right? And so he said, you got to mess it up. Again, I had to rough it up like the drug dealer. I was just too proper.
It's your English coming out, Anya, I guess.
Something like that. How about you? How do you feel about dialogue? Tell me. Do you?
Something. It's how do I feel about dialogue? I like constantly sort of struggle with it. I feel like all of my characters sound like me.
Yeah.
Like if I was talking, it's usually something that I really, really have to clear up. I find that my characters talk too much. Like I talk around a point and I have to strip lots of stuff out. Like I want them to chat for a second before they get to the thing, but
yeah,
they don't need to chat.
Yeah, they don't chat. No.
Yeah. I watched the Aaron Sorkin Mastermind. I don't know if you've ever watched that, and he's a king of dialogue. And his thing was like, we want our character. We don't want our characters sound like humans. We want them to sound like characters.
Yes.
That are human. So they've got to sound like themselves and also serve all the things that they need to serve in the story. So it's something I feel like a lot of writers overlook. You just don't. You're so quick to just use it for one purpose, and there's a lot of but that often feels advanced. Jessica Lynn, going back to talk about your character sheet, she would love to see one of those filled out. I would too.
We can arrange that.
I'm with you.
Yeah, they're fun.
So when do you have a pub date for your next book?
I just know it's going to be May. I think it'll be around the same, around May 25, 26, round about there, the Tuesday, whatever the mid-20s in May
They've got
is.
you on May. You are their May.
I think so. Well, for the next one, and then the one after that, we'll see. Providing I can write it on time and everything. But I like a spring release. It's fun because then it goes into the summer, and it's fun. The later spring.
It's fun to talk and do stuff, when the sun is shining. And,
When's yours coming? That's what we want to know.
I just got my pub date, so it's November 2022.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's a ways out, but I'm pretty excited. Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Is that's not a sequel to the Cherry Season?
No. This is a book about it's about two sisters who are estranged, and it's at their mother's funeral, and small town Iowa, and they believe they and everybody in the world knows everything there is to know about their mother, who was like a Vietnam nurse, and her diaries got published, and she wrote a column on parenting, and like there's nothing that they could know that they don't know about Betty K. Beecher. And in walks into this funeral, walks this sort of like Marilyn Monroe type character. And she's like, yeah, you guys don't know your mom. And so from her, we get like, it's probably about 50 years. We get, they meet in nursing school in Iowa in the 60s. And there's Hollywood, there's Vietnam, there's like, so it spans all this stuff. And then there's, of course, like big giant secrets that come out about who they all are.
So it has an element of historical fiction in it then, really?
It does.
Have you done that before?
Well, I love Westerns. And so I've written some Western romances, which, there is a lot of research in that. But this is first of all, a lot of this story is actually kind of my mom's story. Like some of this stuff from nursing school and Iowa nursing school, like I'm pulling directly from my mom. So I know it's historically accurate. But yeah, so it was a real, it's the kind of thing where you're like, what was that date? What was that date? What was the number 4 song in 1968?
Right.
When did people start doing CPR? All these things that
thank goodness for the internet.
Very true.
Wow.
Very true.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to read it. November 2022. Sign me up.
I'll send you a copy. I'll get right on. If first chapter fun is still happening in 2022, sign me up.
Well, we'll see. But I think right now we're booking into March, so it's not that too long. Not that too long. I can't even talk anymore. Not March. That long. Yeah. Right now. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Man, I'm not booking August for my interviews, which is a dumb month to take off because so many great books come out in August. But I'm just like, like the read a book a week. While you don't really think it's hard because you probably read a book a week, but you miss one night or you've got to read something else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely.
Like,
no, that's a lot of books. That's a lot. So you're going to continue with the series then, because it was only supposed to be a limited pandemic thing, wasn't it, for a couple of months?
I know. But it's just been fun. Yeah. It's just been fun.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what first chapter fun is. It's community. It's a chance to connect with other authors. It's a chance to talk to readers about great books. Like, what's not to love?
That's right. Yeah. Exactly right.
Well, everybody out there, please go pick up a copy of You Will Remember Me. You won't regret it. There it is. I need my Kindle. I have mine on my Kindle. Sorry. And Hannah, thank you for stopping by tonight. We'll see you next year, I hope.
Yes. Oh gosh, I hope to see you before. Oh man, yeah. We'll have to.
Everybody out there, get vaccinated, have a drink, read a book. Good night, guys.
Thank you.